Hey everybody, and welcome to the Army Chap, where we cover everything U.S. military and U.S. chaplains. If you're new here, interact with the video. I don't care how you interact with it, just interact with it. If you found this video helpful, then I would ask that you join our community by hitting that subscribe button. If you like the video, simple, like the video. If you dislike the video, that's okay. Hit the dislike button and comment down below what we can do to help improve the content that we put out here on the Army Chap channel. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So today we're going to be talking about MEPS. And we're going to go through some of the largest questions that most people have in regard to MEPS. What is MEPS? What does it look like? What does the average day look like? And my own personal experience. If you would like to look down below in the description, you can find each of these time cards and you'll be able to jump straight there in the video to find what you value the most. But we'll begin by asking the first question, which is, what is MEPS? MEPS stands for Military Entrance Processing Station. Well, what does that mean? MEPS is your first real step in your military journey. It doesn't matter if you're going into the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Space Force, or the Marine Corps. It all begins here at MEPS. Basically what MEPS does is it's a bunch of tests or a series of tests that are all packed together into what they call a profile. And basically that profile just determines whether or not you are fit for service in the United States military. Now, as a caveat, all MEPS experiences are not the same. Some people might be taking the ASVAB, others might just be doing the physical or the medical portion of MEPS. Some people will be picking jobs and signing contracts, and others will be transferring in or out of different branches of services, and then others like myself went and got to go home after the fact. It all depends on where you are in your journey, but regardless, it all starts at MEPS. Now on to our next question, which is, what does a day at MEPS look like? Well, the short answer is, it depends. The official website says the typical MEPS process is 2 days consisting of the ASVAB test, the physical, job selection, and swearing in. And if you had to do all of that in one sitting, yes, certainly that would be a 2-day process. But from my experience, most people at MEPS have either already taken their ASVAB or they don't have to take it. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the video. When it comes to the military physical, it is a lengthy process. So the best information that I can give you on that is to hurry up and wait. Get used to waiting. When it comes to job selection, the score that you get on your ASVAB test determines what jobs you qualify for. So what will happen is at the end of your MEPS experience, you'll sit down with your liaison. For me, it was the Army liaison, and you will go through what jobs that you are qualified for based on your ASVAB score. It's important to note that you can choose one of the jobs that this person selects, or you can choose none of them at all. Remember, at this point in the process, you are not in the United States military, and therefore you can choose one or you can choose none of them, and at any time walk away from processing. But if you choose to go forward with it, once you sign your contract, you will swear in and then potentially even ship the same day to your basic military training or your basic course, wherever that may be. Regardless, in your MEPS experience, you will find men and women from all walks of life, and some of them are at different stages in their journey. We had some with us who just needed a portion of their physical. We had others who were processing to change branches. We had a Marine that was going into the Army and was having to go through MEPS again. And then we had others who were shipping out same day, and yet still others who were joining the reserve component, like myself, and got to go home after the fact. So it really just depends on where you are in your journey. Now on to my MEPS experience, and this took place early March 2023, whenever you happen to be watching this video. But it all begins with a good recruiter. A bad recruiter will make this process way more difficult than it has to be. For me, I was scheduled for MEPS on 3 separate occasions. And when I actually did end up going on the 3rd occasion that I was scheduled for, I went to check in and they didn't even have my information. So I start this process off by saying, make sure you have a good recruiter, make sure that your recruiter has your best interests in mind and is doing his or her job carefully and thoughtfully. Now for me, I was a bit further away from my MEPS location, so I ended up staying at a hotel overnight. My recruiter told me that I needed to be there no later than 1500 hours. So that's what I did. I showed up a little bit before time. And basically you just walk into the hotel facility. I asked the lady behind the desk and she told me that I was to be waiting in the lobby until the time that we were called to get our first brief for our MEPS process. When it came time to check in with your MEPS representative, really all you need is a photocopy of your ID, and then you'll have to sign some information basically saying that you are there, you are who you say you are. And then if you're driving, you'll have to fill out a separate sheet of information. This basically covers your parking on the facility for any of the time that you happen to be there, as well as when you travel to your MEPS location. You'll also need to make sure that your recruiter has sent the information over. If you're like me, my name wasn't on any of the lists that they had, and so don't worry. What they'll have you do is take a picture of a little card that has all of the information they need. They'll ask that you send that to your recruiter, and then as long as your recruiter has that information to them by the time of your first briefing, then you will be in, no worries, and you won't have to go through any of those processes that I had to go through. At this time, we were assigned a room number as well as assigned a roommate. No, you do not get to select your roommates, at least we did not at this particular processing facility. We were then told to be back for our first briefing at 20:30 hours, which is 8:30 civilian time. We would be there to get our first briefing, basically to talk about what's going on the next day at MEPS, what time is curfew, and what we need to expect moving forward throughout the rest of the afternoon and the next day. Also at this time, they gave us a dinner voucher. And this is something that I want to point out because we get asked all the time, well, how much should I take to MEPS with you? I spent $0 while I was away attending MEPS. And again, I had to stay the night before and there was an all-day process. I spent $0 except for the gas that it cost me to get there and the gas that it cost me to get back. My hotel was paid for, my food was paid for or provided, and my parking was completely paid for. No money was spent out of pocket, completely taken care of by the US military. After dinner, we went back up to the room until it was time for our briefing. Again, our briefing was at 20:30 or 8:30 in the afternoon. And our briefing was simple. What time is curfew? For us, it was 2200 hours. What time are you gonna have to wake up in the morning? What is your first wake up call? For us, it was 0400. We had to be downstairs for roll call at 0430. That means you better be there because when they start calling your name, it is very, very important that you're there and accounted for at all times. It sets the tone for the day, and that information gets passed along whether you realize it or not. You also get told at that time what time breakfast will be. For us, it was between 0500 and 0530. And then from that point, the buses will come and pick up those recruits who are using the bus or the shuttle to get to the MEPS facility. And for those who drove, like myself, you have to go into another brief. Basically, they just tell you where to park so that your parking is paid for and that you do not suffer the risk of getting towed like some folks do. Now, at this point, once we arrived at the MEPS facility, no two MEPS are the same. And for us, we ran across the worst person that we would encounter all day as soon as we got to MEPS. But that's a good thing. What I mean by that is that everybody was so helpful, so kind, so courteous. They were straightforward and gave simple commands, but as long as you listened to what they had to say, then you really didn't have to worry about anything. So at this time, while we're standing outside of the MEPS facility, we were lined up on two lines. And basically our first brief at MEPS was, don't bring any weapons in, duh. And secondly, all of your belongings, yes, including your phone, are gonna go into a locker that is supervised by cameras all over the place, so you don't have to worry about anybody stealing them. So the only thing that you will have on you is the clothes on your body, and that's only for a little while. And then you will have your ID card, your photo ID, as well as your social security card. That is it. That's all that you will actually take with you as you begin your processing through MEPS. For us, once we went through the security screening, they pointed us toward the locker area. We took all of our belongings off, placed them in the locker, and then we were appointed toward our liaison. For me, it was the Army liaison. This, all it consisted of was walking into a room, picking up my nameplate, and picking up a lanyard to put my social security card and my ID card in. Those will be worn around your neck, and you can give those if you're asked for them, but the rest of the time you will have your medical information sheet, which will come a little bit later in the process. From that point, you are taken into a classroom type area, at least we were, and in this location you checked in, got your official MEPS paperwork for the day. This basically is where they fill out everything about you. All of the tests that they run, as well as any of the retests that they end up having to do, are filled out on this sheet. Also in this room, we took our heart rate and our blood pressure while we were already in there and sitting, so that's one less thing that we had to do when we began getting passed from station to station. After that, we were instructed to go out the door and to the control desk. And the control desk is basically the area where you check in after every station that you go to. So after we got our heart rate and blood pressure monitored, we went out of that classroom area to the control desk, where then we were given a little line of letters. And it looked like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, and you're told to place that on your name tag. But you then find out that this is all of the different stations that you're going to be going out through the day. And it's so satisfying getting to check off or getting to blank out each one of those letters as you go through the process, so that you know about how much longer you have to go through the day. So what does an Army physical look like? The Army physical looks like an initial interview. You then have to go through the actual physical process where they'll look at different parts of your body, check your upper and lower mobility and things like that. You have to go through a hearing test, a vision test. You'll have to go through blood work. It's only one tube of blood, not that big of a deal. You'll have to do a drug test, and then you'll have to do your height and your weight. Now, when it comes to those things, there is no specific order in which you get those done. When you get done with one area, all you do is go to the control desk and they'll point you in the right direction. Again, all you have to do is listen, follow instructions, say yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir, and you'll be good to go for the rest of the day. Now, for me, I'll tell you a little bit about my process. As I said, when I was in the classroom, it was heart rate and blood pressure. That was the first two things that were taken right away. Then we were sent to, the males were sent to male ortho. And all that means is that you go in there and they check your height and weight. After male ortho, I was pushed out into a hallway where they were supposed to be checking for my vision. So I was sitting in line waiting to have my vision checked. At that time, a door popped open and the physician called me in. Remember, I'm in the line for vision, but you don't stay necessarily in the same line where you've been placed. If a doctor or physician calls you in, listen, go. It will drastically expedite the process. So for me, I was sitting in the vision line, got called into the classroom or into the doctor's office, and there I did my interview and my military physical. When it comes to this portion of MEPS, don't stress about it. Tell them the truth, tell them the same thing you told your recruiter, and don't stress about the rest of it. They do all of the simple things. They check for your lung sounds, they check your ears, they check your eyes, they check inside your mouth, they check up your nose, all of those basic things, as well as they do upper and lower mobility. Perhaps you've heard about the naked duck walk. This is where you will do your duck walk. Most of the time it's done in your underwear, but on occasion they have been known to fully strip people down. Before I forget, they also ask about any scarring or tattoos that you may have. I don't have any scars, I don't have any tattoos, so that was a very straightforward part of the process. But the rest of the physical is what everybody is always worried about. Don't be. These are professionals, and there will always be a chaperone available upon request. For me, I had a female doctor. She did not do anything without a male chaperone in the room present and waiting for me to do any and all of my tests. For males, I cannot speak for females, but for males, I know as a matter of fact that they will check your genitalia as well as ask you to bend over and spread eagle. The whole process, or that whole process, takes less than 5 seconds. Don't sweat it, don't worry about the small stuff. Just move on to the next stage. Once I was done with my physical, they put me right out in the hallway, again, in the line for vision. Now the vision line was long, and so I got called immediately to go to blood work. Blood work, very simple. A single needle stick, one single tube of blood, that's all they need. There's nothing to be scared of. It's not them dumping you dry of all of your blood or needing all of your blood. One needle stick, one tube of blood, that's all that they require. And a similar thing can be said for both your hearing and your vision tests. Your hearing test consists of sitting in a room, putting on some headphones, and then anytime you hear a beep, you press a button. Very simple, very straightforward. No reason to go into more detail than that. As far as your vision test goes, it's just like every other vision test. You go in, you look with both eyes, read a line, they close one of the eyes, you read another line, they close the other eye, you read another line, and your hearing and vision test is over. Now, the drug test is an area where I know males especially have a lot of questions. Yes, you do have to pee in a cup. Yes, there will be other people present in the room with you when you have to pee in that cup. And yes, the chaperone will have to see your specimen leave your body and enter the cup in order to be a valid void and test result. If for some reason you cannot void, don't worry about it. You can try again later. My drug test was the last thing that I had to do that day, and the only thing I had to drink up until this point in the day, probably about 10:30, was a half a cup of apple juice that I had for breakfast. I didn't have anything else to drink, so when they called my number, I didn't really have to go. No worries at all. They put me back out in front of the control desk. They told me to drink water. I did so for about 30 or 45 minutes, making sure to do so slowly so I didn't get sick. And then when they call me back again, provide the sample, no questions asked, no comments needed. Once you provide a sample, you will have to go to a window and then verify that that is your sample that's being placed into a sealed container. And you have to verify that the seal is not broken, that your social matches, and that the number that you are assigned matches as well. From that point, you are done with your drug screening. If for some reason you are unable to void the second time around or at the end of the day, what you will have to do is you will have to come back to your MEPS location within 3 consecutive days. If you are not able to provide a specimen within 3 days, or they call it voiding, if you're unable to void within 3 days, you will be disqualified for military service for 180 days. So you want to make sure that you're not taking a bunch of bathroom breaks in between. Get plenty of water when that portion of your day comes up, and provide your specimen the first time. After all of those things is done, you'll have to meet with the physician that you met with the first time. You're not going to meet another physician. It's always the same one. And basically this time they're just going over your profile. They'll give you basically a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Are you fit for service? Are you not fit for service? For our group, everything wrapped up by about 11:15, 11:30 in the morning. And from that point, we were sent to lunch. Now, lunch is a little bit different here because you have to sign in order to get your lunch. Now, that's not a problem if your recruiter is doing their job. If your recruiter does not do their job and does not get the appropriate paperwork in on time, then what you'll have to do is like what I had to do. Go to your Army liaison. They'll have to print you out a sheet with just your name on it. You have to take it back to the chef, sign it in front of him, and then and only then can you get your lunch. After that, for those who are riding the bus or shuttling, they'll have to wait for that. For those that are shipping, you'll be placed in a room in a row by where you are shipping to. I think for us, there were some going to Fort Jackson, some going to Fort Benning, and some going to Lackland in Texas. And then after that, for those like me, we just left and drove home. And that was really the end of the experience. Now, as far as things that you should know, there are really 4 things that I would tell anyone that was going to MEPS, especially for the first time. The first one of these is that for the majority of you watching this, you are not in the military yet. And what that means is at any point throughout the process, you can stop processing. You don't have to sign any contracts. You don't have to sign any dotted lines. You don't have to do anything that you feel uncomfortable doing. Don't get pushed into something or some area of service that you do not want to be in. Secondly, and this is a big one, do not be in a rush. At this point, you are not on your own time. You're on the time of the MEPS facility. Be pleasant, be respectful, be easy to work with, and make sure that you just pay attention to what they have to say. And that segues perfectly into the third thing that I have to say, which is listen. And I'm not just talking about hear audibly with your ears. I'm talking about understanding what the people have to say, understanding the directions that you're told. They're processing a bunch of people in a small amount of time. If they tell you to walk out the door, go straight across to the door that has a yellow X on it, there's no reason why you should be out and walking around for 10 minutes or out talking to someone. Listen to the instructions, go to where you're supposed to be, and you won't have any issues. If you find yourself not knowing where to go, make sure you ask for clarification. Don't just aimlessly wander around. That's a good way to get called out and draw attention to yourself. And sometimes the more you fly under the radar, the better off you'll be. And finally, the last thing that I would leave you with is don't be so concerned about passing everything on the first try. For example, when we were doing the very first thing, our heart rate and blood pressure, the petty officer that was doing our checks, he was cracking jokes, and it had us all laughing at the same time that my heart rate was being taken. Well, it was over what they considered to be normal. And so they ended up having to check my heart rate again. Was there anything wrong with my heart rate? No. Within 45 minutes, they rechecked it, signed off on my paperwork, and I was good to go. Don't worry about passing stuff the first time. For some of you, you may end up having to have your ears cleaned out. For the others of you, like if you're not able to void the first time, you can come back a second time and try to void for your drug screen. If you're not able to do it then, you just have to come back within 3 days. It's not that big of a deal, but you want to try and have everything done the first time, if at all possible. Just makes everything go a lot easier. And really, That's it. That's about my MEPS experience and what you can expect from MEPS in 2023. If you found any of the information in this video helpful, I would just ask that you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Like the video, really helps us along with the channel, especially as we're starting new and progressing through the rest of our videos. If there's something that I missed, or if there's an experience that you would like to share, feel free to drop that down in the comments section below. Let this be a forum where we can talk with one another and reason through these experiences together. And make sure if you comment down below that you check back in after a little bit of time to see if anybody has interacted with your post as well. And until the next time, this is the Army Chap signing off.